Welcome to episode 2, Mind for the Game, a Dota 2 podcast associated with AD2L, Amateur Dota League. I'm here with Chev, Rusty Shackelford, and Rhino. My name's IPA. We're all captains or players in the Conqueror Season 41 League. Hopefully you caught Season 1, or Episode 1, Season 1, our inaugural podcast and pilot last time. Today we're going to talk a little bit less about specifics of Dota and a little bit more about the relationship of captaining to the league itself. Chev, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good, man. I just got back from a 10-day long work/vacation trip, so I'm exhausted. I got home 10 minutes ago, but I'm ready to be here with you guys. I'm hyped. I'm psyched. Ready for this week. Should be fun. Should be a fun time.
Excellent. Rhino is multitasking like only a young mind can do, playing a Dota game and podcasting at the same time. How's it going, Rhino?
Yeah, no, I completely forgot about the recording tonight because it's supposed to be on Mondays. I'll have you guys know it's supposed to be on Mondays. We had some schedule conflicts, so we had to move it to Tuesday. I feel good tonight. I'm excited to talk about our topics. We have an exciting little agenda for you guys tonight, and excited for IPA to host, so I'm glad to be here.
Last but certainly not least, the current king of content, Rusty. How we doing, brother?
Good. I was happy to be recently featured in Rhino's YouTube video. I was hoping he would flame me more, but had a fun time listening to that. So current king of content status is pending as of the latest drop, but doing great. Excited to be potting for episode 2. Episode 2 out of the 3 that we'll be releasing before we call it quits. So happy to be here.
A bold prediction. So I'm going to jump right into it. We're all doing well, which is great. The first topic I wanted to talk about is one of the players in AD2L, not a Conqueror player this season, was a Conqueror player last season, actually played on my team. Blunted was actually banned recently for smurfing in AD2L. So those of you that don't know, listen to the podcast, maybe not familiar with Warrior League. Warrior League is right below Conqueror, and Blunted was the star mid laner of Team Ligma that was 13-1 in the regular season, and by all accounts was essentially just running through the entire Warrior League. With Blunted is kind of probably the main reason for that happening. And if you look on Spectral stats, you can actually see how dominant Blunted has been this season. So with him getting banned, I kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts on some of the policy that A2L has about approaching that specific ban. So in Blunted's case, he was banned for undisclosed Smurf accounts. So 2 lower, I think, Archon accounts that he was playing on during the season that were undisclosed, and he was banned from playoffs and the rest of the season. So his punishment, first question to you, Rusty, do you agree with that punishment? Is it too light, too heavy? Where are you at on how the admins approach that particular ban?
All right, so this is an interesting debate. I've heard some saying it was a light punishment. I've heard some say 1 to 2 series would have been sufficient. I think in the past you have to kind of compare. There have been some scenarios where people were upset with the admin team for taking too lenient of a stance. I remember a couple seasons ago in Conqueror, Mochi was found in a similar, less malicious situation, but a similar situation where a undisclosed alt was being used by one of their members, and it happened during playoffs, and I believe there was very little, if any, punishment. Definitely not a suspension, maybe some draft penalty back then, but if so, that was about it. And people will, I think, correctly think that was a bit too lenient. And so I think we're starting to see them go the other direction. I think this one was a bit more malicious in the sense that Blunted was probably trying to avoid reaching whatever hidden threshold there is for like ranking out of a division. And some have speculated / perhaps have some evidence that some more unique heroes were maybe practiced on these alts before playing them in AD2L when otherwise they might not have been scouted. And so if so, I think that's also a bit more malicious. And the fact that there's multiple accounts at play, as well as more games than like that previous situation I mentioned, I think it's a pretty fair punishment. And I think it's kind of admins covering their own behind a bit as well, because when a player like this ranks up this high, especially if they're on a team with a moderator, I think it can be kind of a bad look for the league, even if there's nothing malicious or intentional behind it at the beginning of the season. It just looks kind of sus sometimes. So I think they're kind of just like removing that whole, the community would probably be upset if Blunted was allowed to return. And in addition to his rank gain that's been skyrocketing, would be able to come back after breaking the rules. And if Ligma ended up winning the playoffs, I think that would cause an even bigger shitstorm. So that's basically my roundabout way of saying I think it's a fair punishment, and I'm good with it.
All right, so Blunted was officially a Chev Glaze target, if you guys don't remember.
Oh yes.
Which means I'm guessing Chev, and I think you might have even said in chat that you thought this was a bit harsh.
Well-
Is that actually your stance, or are you meaning?
Okay. First of all, Connor's take is not an official Mind for the Game stance on the opinions on why Blunted did what he did. Just to kind of put that disclaimer out there, I think we feel pretty differently about this. I don't think. All right, so I don't think that. First of all, I don't think what they did was malicious by nature. I think it was more negligent. I think it was, and I've said this, like the whole chat blowing up in Warrior for a long time. I think we can debate that back and forth, and this is probably not the right place for it. But I think I think that Blunted wasn't intentionally trying to cheat or bend any rules. Sorry, I forgot your original question before. I'm all over the place with this. You said
My original question was, do you think the punishment was fair?
Is it a fair punishment? Originally, I said no. Originally, I was like actually like kind of heated in chat about it. I was like, oh, there's no way that this is fair, and it was based on previous punishments that had happened with the whole like discovering Han's B's account in season 40. So I was like, this is kind of like a bad call. This is a bad admin decision. Obviously, I like Dill. I like Blunted as like players and people. So I don't want them to like get their season robbed from them. Obviously, like they're the chip winners this season in Warrior. If that team, the 5 players were able to go forwards, I mean they have 15 wins. They're like unstoppable when Blunt is there. But I now like after that whole Discord chatter going on, I now feel that it's probably fair, and I'm glad that they're taking a more strict stance on finding undisclosed alt accounts. It's pretty easy to just disclose an alt. I mean, even recently we had to disclose an alt for Teju. He hit Immortal. He wants to play with some of his friends that are not Divine players, namely Metro, who's like a Legend player, right? So they can't play ranked together if they don't have a Smurf account. So we yesterday had to just disclose, like, get Teju an alt account and disclose it instantly. And it was easy enough. Like, you make a ticket, you say a couple words. It's really, really not hard to do. So whether it's like intentionally done and like nefarious to try to get an edge in the season, which I don't think they need to again, or if it's just negligent, either way it should be punished, right? Because like it's so easy to disclose an alt account. So I'll say yeah, it's fair for sure.
One other thing I'll mention, I feel like I agree. I don't think it was really. It probably was more careless than negligent, or sorry, more carelessly negligent than it was like malicious, especially for Blunted. I do think the way Dill kind of covered it up, at least in some things that sort of came out in the aftermath, and the fact that he as the captain knew about the alt and didn't make sure to reveal it is a bit of a different story. But I will say, if admins sort of show leniency on this issue, even though Blunted wasn't necessarily hiding a ton of like secret strats or anything, I do think, if they continue to show lenience on this, it kind of opens the door for other people to use it in a more malicious way, in a way more designed to get a competitive advantage. And so I'm just glad they're trying to like shut it down in a firm way and continue to push the fact that it's pretty easy to just disclose and play on whatever accounts you want.
Yeah, you gotta be tough on crime, Rusty.
No comment. We don't need to get political here.
So Rhino, as a official investigator of the deep state, I think Rusty brings up a really good question, which is I would like you to answer the question that he kind of posed, which is, do you think the punishment was more severe because Fred is on the team? If there's not an admin or a moderator on that team, do you think a different player gets to play in the finals? Maybe they only get a draft penalty, like we were referencing Mochi.
I think it's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, I'm just like Chev. I was sort of mad. Like one, it's like super cool. I truly enjoyed my time on a team with him. I think he's a great Dota player. So I was mad with the initial announcement. But I honestly think they should have allowed Blunted to play, but honestly ban Dill permanently for the season.
Really?
That's what I would have done. And because the more negligent thing in my head was the captain just trying to hide it, right? Blunted, like if we all talk to Blunted, the kid's not like he's not like a super malicious guy. Like he's not trying to get upper hand. He doesn't need to. He's just better than these kids, anyways, right? Like it's fucking like the guy's immortal and he's playing fucking warrior. Like he doesn't need to hide accounts to gain an advantage. I think that's a bullshit take. But I do think Dill hiding the account is the big reason that I would have handled as an admin. Honestly, I would have banned Dill.
I agree with Rhino. I think draft penalty. I think Dill should have had at least 1 week suspension. He literally played with it. I mean, at the end of the day, if your player hides it from you and you can prove, like, either with screenshots or whatever, that you ask them, like, hey, do you have any alt? If they are hiding it from you, that's one thing. But if you are playing with the account and then denying its existence to other people, I think that's worthy of a stricter punishment than a draft penalty. I would agree. I don't know about banning Dill for the whole season, rest of the season, but I would not have minded a 1 series suspension for him as well.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's always a personal policy of mine as a captain to, and so Hexy is on my team this season, and Hexy is one of the players who is famous or infamous, depending on how you feel about Hexy, about having a number of Smurf accounts. And so I think last season in Conqueror, he actually got his team a draft penalty because he was playing with his profile in private. And so before joining the team, the statement that I made to him was, hey, like, I want to play Dota with you. I'm excited to play Dota with you. But I will not, like, I can't do it if you're going to do private profiling stuff, if you're going to hide accounts. Like, I can manage the team. Like, you will never have to do a captain thing in Discord. I will manage every aspect of the team. It will never be a problem. There will never be any drama as long as you're honest with me. If you're honest with me, I can deal with it all. And it's kind of the same thing I tell every player. So I do appreciate the idea that the captain's got to hold, they got to hold some responsibility in this. They always do. That's the job.
No, I think that's fair. I don't know. There is definitely a level of responsibility captains take. Yesterday, I was obviously, like, I'm traveling and it was hard for me to kind of be at my phone. But luckily, I saw a message, this morning from Teju said something to Subwoofer in a ticket that was like, hey, we're going to be sharing this account, which obviously you're not allowed to do. So then Subwoofer goes, there's no sharing accounts. Wait, what's happening? And then I didn't see it till the next morning. I was like, shit, okay, no. That's not what he means. He means he is getting an account from a friend that was a previously shared account. From now on, Teju will be the only person playing on this account. But there is, like, that level of responsibility you have to take as a captain to be like, okay, I'm going to make sure my players' accounts are in line, make sure we're not breaking any rules. So as much as it pains me, because I love Dill, to say, like, maybe there should be some like accountability for his actions in this matter. Like, I think maybe the punishment shouldn't have been so harsh on Blunted and maybe a little bit on Dill instead. I don't know. I don't know the entirety of it, but I do like Rhino's idea of, like, having a captain share some responsibility there for sure.
I didn't know he played with the Smurf. That's crazy.
Yeah,
like,
so from what I saw, him and their Pause 4 played with the Smurf. I don't think there were any games with Urbo or Fred.
Did he just not know that it wasn't disclosed?
That's probably the claim, or perhaps
okay,
is true.
Nah, it's on the website now.
But
Come on.
also, it is your responsibility as captain to make sure that is true. So
Yeah,
I
for
would
sure.
say at best it is negligent, turning a blind eye, or perhaps absent-minded. But still, it is your responsibility at the end of the day, especially if you are directly interacting with it.
And I think the precedent of punishing players for gaining rank and improving in the Dota game is not great for an amateur Dota 2 league that sort of wants people to do that, right? We don't want people to just sit in the same fucking division for 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons, right? It's like, yeah, I think I personally thought it was a little dumb to put it fully on Blunted because I immediately knew, like, I see these guys queuing with these Smurfs every day. It's like not hard to do these investigation, right? Like they're not offline, like they're just in parties with these guys, right? So I personally think it was a little too hard on Blunted. He should be able to play at least the grand finals. Like this was his chip season. Like we're keeping it honest. They threw a chip away. To be honest,
Yeah, I don't see anyone beating them. I believe they were 12-0. I think they were 12-0 with Blunted. Their only loss was with Ascendant.
This man grinded his ass off, learned the game, came up, like, and he hasn't been playing the game for that long. He's a young guy too, like, so I think that's what hurt me the most, right? Like, he's a young guy. He did everything right until this moment, and I think him not understanding the rules of AD2L, but Dill's been in AD2L since I've been here, so I know he understood the rules. So I think that's why the blame should be shared.
I actually scouted Blunted for that team. He is like very good at the game. I was like talking to Fred before the season. He goes, "Do you know any Ancient 3 players that I can get?" I was like, "Get Blunted and you'll win the whole chip." Like he's so good. As a shameless like Chev Glaze target plug right now. I like saw him when he was playing with Malibu and I was like, this guy's way too good to be playing on a team with Malibu right now, respectfully.
So I'll wrap this topic up, and I'll keep the question simple. Given that Blunted is off of Team Ligma, where do you guys have them placing in playoffs in Warrior League? Start with you, Rhino.
Oh yeah, I would love to go first. So I actually tried out for this team. We ran some scrims. I got into the team. I actually withdrew my candidacy. Like after like 2 games. I think Valencia was a lot for this team. In the fact that he was the playmaker, he showed up in the late game, potentially the one that talks the most in comms. Like I could just tell he was actually in the comms while I was playing games with these guys. And the way he would talk about Dota and the way he would talk about like what's happening in the game, it was very like in-game leader-esque. So I personally have them potentially as maybe I don't know, maybe a lower bracket wild card after they lose this week 1. There's no hate to Dill, but like I'm assuming they're going to choose R&B. And R&B's
I think they did choose R&B.
They did choose
R&B
on
the bracket,
right?
Yeah.
So I'm never like R&B's their experience. They understand the game. So Ness is insane as well. So I think it's going to be rough for them. I think it's going to be rough.
Understand the game is the stretch.
That's a wild take.
I can't wait.
Is that a wild take? My bad.
They ran a pause 5 Razor in their last match.
R&B understands their version of the game. All right.
Yeah, we'll okay. That's more.
We've all had to draft against R&B.
They are experienced and they have won significant things at like warrior level of Dota in the past. So I'll say that is a fair take. I'll say I still think they have good players. I don't think you go 12-0 with like one guy backpacking. Like you probably drop a game or 2 here and there. Even if that was the case, I'll say first or second still, even with Sanded. I'll just say like second place, just sort of even it out.
Chev?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I think that Warrior, it's hard for me to say. I don't know a lot of the players in Warrior. Just looking right now, and I think that the division's pretty weak in general. I mean, even rigged teams in other divisions don't do as well as Ligma did in Warrior this season. So I think it's kind of weak. So they definitely still, I would never be like, oh, they don't have Blunted, they have no shot. Like Urbo is a great pause 5 player. Dill, I think, is easily the best carry in the division. I think Dill would do well in Warrior, or in Conquer even. Like Dill's great. But that team feels like it probably relies on a playmaking in-game lead mid player who has a lot of impact.
Serious?
Yeah. Of course.
He would do well in Conqueror League.
Dill as a carry? Yeah, absolutely. I think Dill's great.
You know the carries?
Yeah.
Name the top 3 carries in Conqueror League.
Teju. I actually would have said Bolby, but Teju, probably Cloud / Hexy, depending on who's playing for them on one. Maybe Ouch.
Maybe Ouch?
Yeah,
what? No, Ouch is 100% 2. Ouch is 100% 2. Like, it's Teju, Ouch for sure.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's a little fall off.
Yeah, that's why I think Dill would be good. I think Dill would be fine.
You think Dill would be up there? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not gonna put him in top 3, but I'm saying he would do decently. Like, I think he would fit fine on any team.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, I think that they're still gonna do fine. I don't think they're obviously gonna be as dominant. I don't know actually who they got to replace. Do you guys know the replacement for Blunted?
So we scrimmed them actually, and they had oddly enough one of Blunted's friends as the tryout in the scrim. I don't actually know how that played out. So
I mean, there's no one on the website, and they don't have to decide until.
What was the scrim result?
2 stops. We stopped them both games. I think the second game, their offlaner was level 5 at 15 minutes.
I mean, 10 toes beat these guys, man. Like, these guys aren't serious. I'm sorry.
I mean, okay, let's be honest. I think if one of the teams that you are seriously considering is one of the strongest warrior teams is R&B, I think that Team Ligma can just get any Ancient 3 mid laner replacement, or maybe they get a higher, I'm not sure, because of I'm not sure how it works for them, but Ancient 3 at the least replacement, you can find a decent mid laner at Ancient 3, I think, and do pretty well. I mean, at Butt Health, Diraj is available. I don't know if they'll get him or not, but dude, I mean, like they have options, especially teams getting knocked out in higher divisions. So I still feel like they're the favorite. I think they're gonna win week 1. I would not say as dominant, but I would still say really dominant.
Okay, what's your final place main number? Where'd they end up?
Top 2 for sure. They are in finals.
All right, that's not a number.
I think they'll win.
You think they'll win? There you go. That's a take. I think they finished 3rd this season.
If Warrior was stronger, I would maybe drop them down. I just agree with Chev that it seems like a weaker division this time around.
There's just some teams we don't know. All right, I am going to move on, though. We've already talked a little bit about the next topic, which is smurfing in general, kind of your opinions on it. So by talking about Blunted, we kind of leaked into that a little bit. So, smurfing is, we kind of discussed the rules part, so I'm going to skip over that because I think everyone's kind of given their take on Blunted, and through that I think you can infer everyone's opinions on the rule approach to smurfing in particular. And so my question to you is what about the moral position on smurfing? Kind of the ethics of it. And I'm going to give a basketball analogy in my take on it, because this is AD2L, so you got to relate it to basketball. I am generally supportive of the idea of people having smurf accounts, and I'm generally supportive of them being disclosed in the way that's approached in AD2L. I think it's nice to have a smurf account, especially when you're higher ranked, because sometimes you just want to play in a game that isn't unranked, where people are just fucking around doing whatever. So you want to play ranked where people are trying, but you don't want to try at the level that you're playing at. You just need a game to relax. This is the D1 college player that shows up and pick up basketball just so they can fucking chill out for a game. And yeah, they're probably going to stomp the competition, but like, I don't think everyone should be like, calling for their head, like, I can't believe you like dunked on these randos this one day. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. So like, Rhino, what about you?
No, I completely agree. I mean, I back in the day, one of my famous takes was I thought Smurfs didn't have to be disclosed. Like, I personally am just like, let's fucking play Dota. If you like, we'll all get slowly better if we don't really understand like what our opponent's playing. But why they're drafting it was my big thing. So yeah, no, I'm all for Smurfs. Do I like them disclosed? Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, I'm for disclosed or non-disclosed. I think I'm more for disclosed when your Smurf's higher than your main account. I think that's weird. Then it's no longer a Smurf. Then it's your actual main. So as long as that's the definition of Smurf, I'm fine. Smurfing as a lower MMR account, but you have your main account's your actual IMR account, and the one that your league ranked corresponds to.
Rusty, Chev, either of you have a different stance on this one?
Not different. I mean, I think the cat's kind of out of the bag with smurfing, and you just run the risk of Valve punishing you. So smurf at your own discretion, but for AD2L, I think the way they handle it's fine. I think that's the best way to do it because it's just kind of already a done deal.
Yeah, I think I used to be really like angry about smurfing. I mean, it's no surprise if any of you play the game with me and there's a smurf on the enemy team, I'm checking instantly and just like baby raging about it for like 10 minutes when I get shit stomped mid by some like 7K player on a 2K account. But I think my opinion on it has changed recently a lot because I mean, I've played with friends on smurf accounts.
As you started getting boosted?
No, dude, if anything, I lose with most of my friends on smurf accounts. I think there's just different types of smurfing. There's like the Chinese death stack smurf that's gonna like you're gonna lose the game in like 20 minutes and it's gonna be no fun at all. And like it's just like, why did I even try to queue 5 ranked Dota? Like this is miserable. These people are just like boosting accounts to sell them. And then there's like this smurfing that people do to play with their friends and just like fuck around. And that I think is completely fine. I think, and that's how most people in AD2L or even just like normal human beings that just play Dota for fun play on alt accounts. Because it's like, I can't play with you. Unranked is miserable. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to play unranked with someone who's 7K. It's literally miserable. No fun for any player in the game. So it's like, I think that it's fine. You're going on an account, play with your friend. You're fucking around. You're not like super try-harding like you would on your main account. So I feel like there's nothing wrong with it. I think that AD2L does it correctly, and I think that people that do complain about it in AD2L just need to stop paying attention to that shit and just play the game.
Because those people are out there, by the way. The people that say, you should never have any Smurf account, and if you have a Smurf account at all, you're human garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I used to kind of feel that way. I changed my mind pretty quickly. I think there are people definitely like, I'm not going to name names actually, but there are definitely people that you'll meet in AD2L that feel that way.
I don't use a Smurf personally because I like my hats, and I don't want to play without the hats, so I don't do that.
Fair play.
And I'm against queuing with Smurfs because whenever I've done that in the past, I always lose MMR, so I am against that too.
Yeah, same.
For purely self-interested reasons.
With anybody on a Smurf account, like 40% win rate with all of them. I don't know why.
I queued with some of Chef's shitty friends on a Smurf. They didn't boost me. Queued with Jamie on a Smurf one time. We lost MMR. You know, it's just it's karma. It's the universe telling me I shouldn't be doing this. So like, I'm against it now.
In those games, you get the classic their Smurf versus my Smurf moments.
Yeah, sometimes.
The enemy team Smurf is like popping off 30-0, and your Smurf.
They're like really sweating sometimes. It sucks.
Yeah.
But personally, I never really have queued much with Smurfs. It kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth when I see someone getting boosted. Like there's someone of my friends with nobody that's really commonly known that I know that basically got boosted like to Immortal by queuing with someone on a Smurf. And just kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth. So I'm against that aspect of it, but otherwise, I don't really care too much what people do.
I appreciate that. So, we talked a little bit about smurfing, and smurfing can be used for boosting. I heard, here's what I'll say: you can only smurf if you're good. If you're Crusader, you're not smurfing. All right, like you're just playing
Crusader, smurfing, and Herald.
Yes,
going 20-0.
You're not. All right, and so the only time I haven't smurfed ever in Dota 2, mainly because I just haven't played that many games, and I just don't physically. I don't have the time. I don't want to spend another 100 games getting to play ranked again. But I did smurf. I had probably like 4 or 5 accounts back when I played Heroes of Earth, and I smurfed relentlessly, mainly because I was like top 100 NA in that game, and it is exhausting to constantly play at the higher ends of MMR. And sometimes, sometimes it was with my idiot friends in real life who were terrible, and you just want to play with them and not force them to play against people who are 2K MMR above them, right? And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys is back then I was in college, and like going pro wasn't really a thing because there was no money in it. The tournaments were like $60,000 prize pools, right? And so you could make a career out of it even if you wanted to. And so my question is, like, you guys are all a different generation than me, and different ages, and esports has been an actual thing as you guys decided whether or not you wanted to go to college, or potentially you wanted to pursue something different. And I had this conversation with Blunted. Obviously, it's been kind of a meme in Discord before, but I think Blunted has a specific formula for someone who's interested in going pro in Dota 2, which is he's young enough and has enough natural talent to do it. So he has time to actually play the game at that level, and he has the ability to rank up if he wants to. And that's really the only criteria, because after that, it's all up to you. But I want to ask you guys, have you ever pursued, whether it be this or professional Tetris or Super Smash Brothers, have any of you guys ever tried to pursue gaming or even a sport at the professional level?
Back in the day with Counter-Strike Source, me and some friends tried to get sort of serious about like playing as a team and getting into the esports of that, but we sucked too much. So yeah, like me and some other friends were like really good at the game, but it was just like a different level and a different speed. So just kind of petered out. But that's about as close as I've gotten. Dota, I sucked too much when I was young, so never even crossed my mind.
So Counter Strike, did you play in Cal? I'm assuming.
In what?
Cal, CAL. It would have been the like league equivalent, like before Face It, essentially.
I don't remember. I didn't organize it. I do remember us playing some matches of some kind, and we got destroyed. I don't recall exactly
Gotcha.
what it was called.
Yeah, because I also played in, it was called Cal, but it was essentially the invite league for Counter Strike 1.6 when I was in high school. So
Oh,
that's a
okay.
really good one. That's like very common as well.
That was even before my time, the 1.6 days, but this was Counter-Strike Source we were pretty big into when I was in like high school.
Yeah, back when you have fast Twitch muscle fibers, it's a whole different game, right, Chef?
I mean, I've never been like remotely good enough at video games or Dota to even consider anything close to going pro. I'm very not mechanically gifted at the game, or any games really. Like if you see me try to play like any game that isn't Dota, I look like a dumbass. Like I don't know what I'm doing. I look like you just gave the controller to like a 5-year-old. But I mean, the closest I would even ever dream of that is because I mean, obviously, it'd be something that'd be really cool. It'd be like a cool, like different path, alternative career style thing. But was like, I grew up in like the MLG days of like Halo 3, basically. So everyone was getting in these like, forget if they were called guilds or clans or something back then. But yeah, I was like an MLG kid who wanted to be on a Halo team and try to go competitive with it. But I just wasn't good enough.
What about you, Rhino? How about sports? Like, you guys ever thought you might go pro in sports, like get looked at by colleges, anything like that?
No, I suck
Oh,
too much, but I know Rhino used to play basketball, so maybe he has a
Yeah,
different
same.
answer.
like
Same.
8th grade, 9th grade, I was like pretty good. I was pretty good. Like I think before height mattered too much, and I'm like 5'11", 6 feet, but that's like just not tall enough, and I didn't take the weight room serious. So I think lack of motivation really didn't help. And when you're a small guard, you need like motivation, you need peak confidence, you need to shoot the three ball like a god and play D. And I just wasn't about any of that. Like when I realized that's what they needed from a combo guard, and to make that's what you need from the next level, I sort of stopped playing and put all my time into Dota around that time. And this was when like TI4 or TI3, when like uh MMR, like those dudes were like ancient now. Like Dingy, Puppy, those dudes ancient, maybe divine players now. When they're on like the TI2, TI3 stage. So I created this little league called Zoo League, and we got Like D&M played in that league, like a couple other like semi D2, D1 fucking Dota players played in that league, and that was probably the closest I ever got to touching like a decently competitive league. I just never took Dota serious enough to really understand what it could be at that young age. I think the interesting thing about Dota is you're not only you have to understand what it can be, your parents have to understand what it can be because at that point they sort of own your time. So that's probably the perspective I could give. I think like when I did have the time to like professionally pursue Dota and like have like not only the time but the passion. My parents really weren't rocking with it, so it needs to be a pretty I don't know. It needs to you need to have the right parent set. So like look at Little Nick, like Little Nick's doing it really like doing it the right way. Like setting the goals, doing 12K, 13K MMR on EU servers. Like that guy's an absolute stud, and it's really cool to see his journey. And I definitely think he's not going to be the only prodigy we see in the next 2-3 years into the scene. Like we're about to see a whole new wave of gamers, but you just need a lot of time with Dota. So no, I haven't really got to that level on any level really for real.
I mean, when we grew up, also, it wasn't. I mean, we're all like kind of different generations, but when we grew up, it wasn't like socially accepted or accepted by your parents at all. People like gaming was really frowned upon in the early mid 2000s. It was not like a you can. I know Rhino, you might have been born in like year 2000, but like it wasn't a like you can spend your time doing this and it could be like promoted. It was stop playing video games, go outside. That's what I got my whole life.
Yeah. Oh, man, like early AD2L days, I was sneaking downstairs on a MacBook my parents kept in a little safe box, put it in the password because they didn't want me to game on Dota no more. Like craziness.
Unfair.
Oh man.
I used to have to fight my dad over using the like family computer to play Dota and other Valve games. Like I mentioned Counter-Strike and like TF2 was another big one for me and my friends back in the day. And I have to argue with my dad over time to use the shared family computer before I got my own eventually. Good old days.
That brings back some memories. There's a chance I'm going to have to just roll out the coffin here, but did any of you have to game on dial-up?
Okay, Grandpa, let's get you back to bed.
Only at my grandma's house.
Let me tell you, that was some shit. That was some fucking shit, playing multiplayer on dial-up. Not only did you take the family computer, you took up the phone lines. No calls in or out, baby.
We'll have to get my father on the podcast playing Doom in the 90s.
Yeah. It was Warcraft 2, just like TV2 with a friend. You know, it was wild.
Nice.
But I appreciate that. Thank you guys for that story. So the main thing I really wanted to talk about in the podcast tonight is you guys are a great collection of content creators. And AD2L is really blessed with, I think, a cavalcade of really good content producers, casters. I think the non-Dota players contribute a lot to how enjoyable AD2L is to be a part of. And so I wanted to ask a couple questions about that to you guys, and it's a little different to each of you. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, as a content producer, it's very different to do it when you're actively playing in the season versus in the off season, or talking about non-in-season related things like this podcast, for example. So for Rhino and Chev, I'm going to target you guys a little bit specifically because I know when I produced content, specifically I think my first or second season in Challenger, I produced kind of like an all-stars list and kind of who I thought were the best players in each position. Like not quite the tier list, right? Just like naming the people I thought like top 3 in each position. And when I created that all-stars list, it was right before playoffs kicked off. So I happened to put 3 of my 5 players as a top 3 player or potentially the best in their position. Now, I'll be honest with you, I think that season Cloud was the best carry in Challenger. I don't even think it was close. I also think Shuby was probably the best position 5. I think I had him second in the league, maybe only to like a Talus or something. And I think the other one was I had Jix as the best position 3 player, and I think there's probably a pretty good argument that he was. So I don't think it was a bad list, but I also know for a fact there are specific players on my team that if I'd have ranked them as not good on that list, that would have fucked up their mental. And so my question to you, I'll start with you, Chev, is you are infamous for your tier list, specific players, and actually ranking them against people within the entire league. First of all, props for putting in that work because that is a shit ton of work. Have you ever had
Mix it up? What work?
No, absolutely
He's just
not.
randomly throwing it together.
Absolutely not.
No, he watches all the games. He watches all the games.
I know.
I've talked to him.
Finish your question.
Like, talk to him. How many of your players have you inaccurately ranked to protect their mental?
That is a really good question. I've actually thought about that specifically when I put out lists sometimes. So I think when you make these tier lists and you're on a team, I mean, first I'll address the bias question that you brought up. I think you're going to want to play with players that you think are good, right? So naturally, you're going to think those players are good, and then you're going to rank them higher if you put out content. I think Lorenzo is a fucking beast, so I'm going to I want to play with him, and I thought he was like amazing at Pause 4, just like playing pubs with him before the season. I said I was going to play with Lorenzo 4. Everybody thought I was crazy because he's a carry player. They thought it was like a wild thing to do, and turns out he is definitely one of the strongest Pause 4s. So yeah,
Don't Google pub history as of late.
I haven't been there. He needs to be back. No, so you're gonna think people are good, so you're gonna rank them high and you're gonna play with them. You know, like those biases are gonna exist. But to the question of do you protect your players' mentals when you put out content? Like, I've thought about this before. I think it was last season when I love you, Bernie, but last season when Bernie was kind of playing like really shit in the middle of the season, and I was putting out a tier list, and I was like, man, Bernie off lane is fucking garbage, man. Like, I want to put him in the dirt. And I was like, but I gotta protect his mental because I don't want him to think. I don't want him to know that I think he sucks, even though I didn't really think he sucked. You know, I just thought he was playing poorly. I thought he was kind of like playing scared in the offlane. He was afraid to go in. He was afraid to be in front. He's afraid to play up in
backline
lanes.
Mars.
Yeah. I don't think it was in fights. I think it was more so like on the map. Like he was afraid to play up on the map. I actually had a similar thought about Rhino in MD2L for a little bit, tangential, but Rhino fixed it in like 2 seconds. So I was like, oh, I think Bernie's like kind of playing like shit right now, and I need my offlaner to go in for me. It's just something I like also just need in an offlaner. But I put him, I would have probably put him at like D tier, to be honest. But I put him at C because I was like, I gotta protect this guy's mental. Like, I don't want him to hate me. I don't want him to play like shit next week. So I put him up a tier, and then he did actually like improve like crazy. Shout out to Bernie. He honestly carried us in a lot of the playoff games. He played like a beast. And now I honestly feel like he was one of the best offlaners in Conqueror last season. And he I think he's actually one of the better players on Golf Monday, if not the best player on Golf Monday right now. I love my Bernie. But to be honest, yeah, like I tried to protect my team's mental on that tier list, and that's the only time that I include a bias, I think, is really when I try to like, I don't want this guy to think that I think he sucks. So I'm going to put him a little higher up. I'm not going to tell him he sucks. I mean, there's players who like laugh it off, like Daddy Odin. I'm like, I want to throw Odin in D tier because, you know, he'll get a good chuckle out of it, and he's a good sport. So Odin maybe should be in C tier, maybe Bernie should be in D tier, something like that. Like that'll happen in tier lists. But I generally do like a lot of like, I mean, I don't do this every time because it takes so fucking long, but I have done a lot of research and work on the tier lists. Like I've gone through and watched games from every single person's player perspective on like 2x or 4x speed. And that's actually the first time I found out that Blunted was so good, was because I was doing these tier lists and I was like, holy shit, this guy's like solo killing the enemy mid like almost every single game and then losing the game because his team is trash. But no, I put work into it. There are obviously biases. So I know it was a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah.
I think there's a lot to it, but let's be clear. Within your answer to the question,
that was crazy.
You started reversing and talking up people just because you didn't want to hurt feelings. So like there's even another layer to this. It's not even your teammates, right? Like you had to come in here and be like, oh, Bernie's the best player on Golf Monday because you said something bad about him. Like, let's just be real for a minute. Like, you really think he's the best player on Golf Monday this season?
I think he's I wouldn't say he's the best player. I think he's playing the best.
That's what you
Golf
said.
Monday. I think he is playing the best currently on Golf Monday. I think there was a season. I mean, obviously the best player is Bob, right? Edge Timber. But there was a couple weeks where Edge Timber was kind of playing like shit, and Bernie was playing really good. And I think that happens. There's ebbs and flows in people's gameplay. And on golf, I think honestly Bernie's been like kind of the rock in the games that I've seen and the games I've played against them. I think that Bernie's like definitely the standout player on that team this season.
I don't think that's a hot take. I also would say just because Bob's not here, that potentially the draft and some of his heroes in some of these games are allowing him to have some of the favorable matchups that offlaners need in this patch to win their lane. So just to say that, Rusty, if you want to comment on that, you can. But
I think Bernie is very good at delivering if you get him to the state where he will interact in the game. I don't think he does very much in the early game. But I think he's extremely reliable to like carry a game if you don't throw it, basically, which we were doing a lot of. So I'd agree he's the most consistent, but it's kind of if we lose, it's kind of we sort of threw it more than him doing something silly.
Well, the good news is Chev is not the only person who talks up his own teammates for the purposes of making them feel good, because Rhino, I'll give you some respect, Rhino. I think you were one of the few people that will come out and say some truthful shit when it needs to be said. But I've also seen you fondle your teammates' balls on content.
Rhino is the most biased of this topic. I just want to say
let's
he
is
the
serious.
most biased person.
We'll be serious. We go down the roster list I've been on. The fragility of my teams has been insane. Like a crack in some of their mentals. And my season's over, right? Like, so 100% I have boosted Sun's head up. 100% I boosted Rin's head up, right? I'll call their names out. Sub, throw them on the list as well, right? Like, potentially Bolby at times, right? Like, all my fucking teammates, right? Like, I definitely think, I think last 2 seasons, I think I have credited myself that I've gave my team less bias. I think last 2 seasons, mostly because I didn't think we were that strong coming into it, especially this season because my team was thrown together really late. I did not hype my team up that much in content, really. And actually, I'm glad this question came up this week because I saw Hexy made a comment in its Will chat, and he said Rhino was talking so much shit this season. Realistically, if we compare this season to all my other seasons, I didn't really talk that much.
Sure.
Yeah. I didn't really talk that much. Like I really stayed back because I just knew we were respectfully trash. So like I really stayed back. If anything, I hype Sherry up too, but I think Sherry's a really fun good player. So I do think like me hyping Sherry up and our lane up, right? Like a lot of the times when I hyped the team up, it'd be me and Sherry's lane because I felt like the lane was so strong at times, but we just couldn't get consistent. So yeah, no, I definitely think I fall under the bias for sure. And at some points in time, you understand that like you're the captain as well, and if you're on content, you may making like a YouTube video, especially for my content, which is seen as like explosive and things of that nature. They can really take that shit to heart. I've had teammates message me. I remember way back when like Team Unknown, like after our season loss, I just start flaming my team, and I dropped the video like maybe an hour later, and I get like 4 DMs. Like Brico was on that team, Juke was on that team, and then another guy was on that team too. And they're all messaging me like, bro, that's not cool. Like, you can't do that. Like, yada, yada, yada. So ever since that point, I was really like, all right. I'll try to keep it very vague when I talk about my teammates on content. Just because either way, if you say something bad or if you say something good, I think if you say something good, they may lax back and not play as well as maybe if you just didn't say something at all. Like I've had it go bad where I think realistically, if you look at this season, in the last time I played with Sun, I hyped his head up so much where he generally thought he was, top 3 mid in the league, right? Without practicing, without playing, without scrimming, without putting in the work that required that, So I do think it hurts you as well, right? There, it's a double-edged sword bias. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Love it. So you've talked about a Rhino. Chev, I want to ask you, because Rhino kind of touched on this. When you produce tier list content or just general grading of players and their skill, you talk about them. Have you ever seen that blow up in your face? Like you guys have a scrim or whatever, right? Like Metro says, I can't believe you put me C tier. Like Jenny's like, do you just think I'm not good?
No. I think that my teammates, when they see it, are like, they like will make fun of it. If anything, they're like, "Yeah, that was a C tier pos 5 player right there," or something. Or like that Metro for sure has definitely been like, I'm like, dude, that was such a sick, whatever it is. Like he made like, this one play on Mirana last season. It was like crazy. He caught a puck and it was like insane, like game winning. And I was like, holy shit, you're such a fucking god, Metro. And he's like, nah, dude, I'm C tier. And it's just like hilarious. So I think if anything, I mean, like the people that I play with are usually like good sports and we joke around. We're good friends. So I don't think they're gonna give a shit if I put them in A tier, S tier, C tier, B tier, D tier, whatever. So we make jokes about it. But I haven't really been on teams where I've ranked people poorly that I don't know that well. So it's like it hasn't blown up in my face, but it definitely could. Definitely could.
All right. Well, I haven't seen Rusty kind of do the same thing. You know, I feel like you're generally pretty, I don't know if it's unbiased or you just don't really take personal stabs at people that aren't already clearly your friends that are either in jest or
on my shit list.
yeah, or just on your straight up shit list. And maybe have I just missed the content where you're more on player evaluation, or is that just not part of what you produce?
No, that's never really been my thing. Honestly, no disrespect to others who do this kind of thing, but I feel in the past, not necessarily with Chev, but sometimes, especially like on a live stream type thing, people been, I don't know, just ranking people individually and like putting them like D tier, F tier, never really sat right with me. It just seems kind of, I don't know, almost mean spirited sometimes to like sit down and do that. And I like to focus on more the team aspect. I don't know, that's just kind of the way I view not only like my own teams, but just what I like to talk about in content. Because at the end of the day, I think everyone kind of bears responsibility in success or failures in, you know, whatever your team's arc is that season. And that's just been more what I focus on. Sometimes the individual ranking stuff I think can get, I don't know if toxic's the right word, but kind of negative. The way I've always viewed it is like, imagine you're a random person who like joined AD2L, you don't really know anybody, you see, oh, here's some content for a division I'm in, and then they rank you like D tier, you don't even know them. It's like, I don't know, that would kind of rub me the wrong way if that was the case. But
I mean, that is fair. I like really hate. I don't really love putting people in D tier. I don't like telling people they're bad. I like making tier lists because it's like fun to talk about who the best players are and be like, wow, this person's improved a lot, and like it's fun to evaluate skill for sure. But it like doesn't really feel good to put people, especially people you don't know, in like D tier. So I've recently started just doing like an I don't know you that well tier. Like I haven't watched your games, I've played against you, and I just put people in that bucket. Like
or
I don't know.
I mean, take a look at Grin Fury this season, right? Like, clearly, no offense to them, they're not a good team for this division. They didn't do well, and most of their games were not close. And individually, as players, they probably are like D or F tier compared to the rest of Conquer. But like, they're nice people. I've never had bad interactions with them.
No, Island's really
They've
nice,
been like
for sure.
kind to play against and like nice people, and other people I know have played with them have said nice things. So I just don't feel. I personally don't like ranking people like that. I'd rather, clown your team's draft or make fun of you for throwing if I'm gonna, take some joking jabs at people more than like this guy stinks type of thing. So yeah, I don't know, the ranking, less Chev's content because at least I feel he's putting work into it and he's not like on a live stream talking about why someone stinks. But in the past, I've seen like live stream content where people are ranking people, and it just doesn't quite sit right with me to be like telling people they suck, basically.
Any
even
content
though,
creators come to mind?
no, I mean, just in the past, people have done that.
Let's see.
I mean, this has been a thing for I mean, I've been in the league like 12 seasons now or something, and there have been player tier list content going back even to my first couple seasons. So I don't know. It just never has been something I've wanted to do, and kind of makes me a bit uneasy personally to like rank people like that. So I stay away from it. And I'm not to say people shouldn't do it, but I kind of just prefer analyzing the games themselves, or talking about like, oh, this team's cool. This team plays like this really aggressive style. I like the way they do this, or this team. I'll just use them as like Grin Fury. They always run these like micro mids, like talking about how that plays into their strategy, like Beastmaster mid, Enigma mid, like why that's interesting or perhaps not as well suited for the division, or why it worked in Warrior, like as a counterpoint. Like, I don't know. I just prefer to talk about stuff like that versus like potentially hate on people. So it's funny, yeah. It is a purposeful thing I kind of stay away from.
I can create a new tier that's called Good Person tier.
Like, I would almost be more insulted if you put me there. Like, you're not that great, but I like you, so I feel bad. So I'm gonna put you in this pity category. Yeah. Like,
no,
that would almost be more offensive.
That's like when a girl says that you're nice. You know she thinks you're ugly. All right, that's the you're ugly column.
Ouch.
All right.
I think sometimes, I will jokingly flame my teammates on content sometimes, because some people I know that I team with can take it. Like, I always mess with Ozone because he's always dishing it out to others, and I know he can take being the butt of some jokes too. So, I'll mess with him. But like, sometimes in the past other content I've done, I've tried to like seriously analyze mistakes someone on my team made, and it's like doesn't quite, they're not good at taking that criticism necessarily. So you kind of got to know who you're teaming with and like adjust accordingly, like Chef was saying. But normally for me, these days I'm normally teaming with people in AD2L I would actually consider like, personal friends. So usually there's good rapport there to have some joking flame now and again.
Yeah, I feel that. Rhino, I saw you on mute for a minute.
So I think team rankings are cool, and I think Rusty was pointing out the fact that I was probably the main content that was calling dudes trash. So
No, you were not honestly who I had in mind. I was thinking just more generally, like a lot of in the past I've seen people do tier lists from everything from heroic to like explorer, people ranking like, oh, this guy is A tier mid, this guy's B tier offlaner. Like I definitely didn't have you specifically in mind. I think this is a very prevalent thing.
Okay. I honestly I've only seen Ness and Chev's tier list. I didn't know anyone else did them.
So Subaneer specifically did a Twitch live stream.
That's what I was going for.
Evaluation of individual players a few seasons ago, which is what Chev was referring to. For those viewers that don't know,
I wasn't even specifically referring to him either, though. Certainly, that content fits into the category of what I was talking about. But like I said, people have been doing this like since I've been around, like season 30-ish. So it's definitely not a single small group. Like I think it's just a constant, common form of content.
One of the things that I find fascinating about this particular type of content is people's ability to evaluate individuals in a team setting, which is kind of why Rusty says, I'm just not going to fuck with it. Like, Rusty, do you think you're just unable to evaluate individual players and how good they are?
No, I think I'm going to toot my own horn. I think I'm one of the better people at evaluating who's actually good and who's not. I think most people who make this content are not good at it. And they
who's your mid laner right now?
Who, me?
Yeah, who's y'all's mid?
Well, technically, we don't have a permanent member, but we are using Ren for the time being.
Got it. I was just curious. Okay, continue.
But anyways,
no follow-up? Hold up. Wait, no, stop. You got nothing else to say to that, Rhino?
No, I have nothing else to say. I was just curious who their mid was. He said he could develop and look at talent, and then he said his mid was Ren. And And I was just like, okay,
I got
let's continue.
I got that.
Let's continue. Let's continue.
No, I mean, I get what Rhino's saying.
Let's continue.
A main reason we have Ren on the team is because they're a friend of ours, and also I think they're a lot better at core roles than support. So I'll say in the scrims we've done so far in pubs, they've done extremely well. And we'll see. We have another scrim today, so I'm hopeful that it will continue in that trajectory.
Yeah, I've high hopes.
Mostly after feeling kind of uncomfortable and not as having as much fun with our previous member, the main thing for us was someone who we like hanging out with and who is a good person. So kind of where we're at with that one. But in terms of like ranking players S tier, A tier, whatever, I do think I'm one of the better evaluators of that. And I think Chev's very good at it too. I actually agree with his rankings pretty often.
I'd agree with you too. I think that you are pretty good at it. I mean, just from like off content like conversations we've had. I mean, I think it is kind of hard to tell who's good at Dota and who's not in a team setting. And I think you're one of the people that do well as well.
Some people have some really whack rankings, and I'm just like, you're clearly not paying attention or not watching the games or like you're just not good at it. I don't know what to tell you. Like
it takes
I don't know.
like a lot of time and like genuine effort to actually, or just like a lot of like being around for a while and like paying attention basically to like be able to evaluate people well, you know. Otherwise, you're just gonna think people who are winning are good and people who are losing are bad, or high rank players are good and low rank are bad, which is just not true.
And as a content creator, I do follow AD2L really closely, even other divisions. Like, I've got friends in all sorts of divisions that I like to keep tabs on and see who's doing well in each division. So, I mean, I feel like I have a good grip of who's good and who's not. I mean, I've played it against and with quite a lot of people at this point, so...
I think the other thing, like, the worst thing you can do as a content creator is just talk out your ass. Because then you lose credibility for moments where you like are being honest in your content. So I think the best thing you can do, which Rusty does well as the king of content, is just be honest with your takes and not talk about something that you don't know about.
I see people doing that a lot. It does kind of, I don't know, it kind of irks me at times.
Yeah. If
you're like smug about it. But if you're kind of going in with like tongue in cheek, I guess I don't mind as much, but I don't know. Sometimes people are really arrogant and like talk very uneducatedly about matters in the league, even just spreading blatant like misinformation. And that kind of does irk me as someone who puts at least some decent amount of work and paying attention into it. But
I mean, Ness just put Urbo in D tier support. Like pause 5 for.
Well, he's probably trolling, right? No,
I mean,
I don't know.
So.
I don't know how to decipher it.
Pansy in like S tier or something like that, and
I thought that was all memes. I thought Ness has been doing like joking content, which is fine, but
you can never really tell.
I don't know.
So Chev, one of the things I want to talk to you about your specific content. Because Rusty just said, oh, Chev puts in a lot of work. I think he's pretty good at it. Chev says, I put in a lot of work. I think I'm a lot of good at it. I think that specific type of content, I think there is a serious lack of understanding for the relationship between a personal player's performance and how the team's draft was executed in every specific game. And the reason I say that is because I talked about this on the first pod, is the ability to identify win conditions when you're drafting and potentially win conditions as players based on the individual skill in your lineup. And so one of the things is oftentimes you'll have a sacrificial draft pick, so I'm going to shout out Fatality on my team is always that guy who says, pick me 9, like pick me 13 on a core roll. Like they'll counter me in lane and I don't care. Like I'll find a way to do my best. And I think those particular players who are oftentimes deprioritized in the draft and countered in the game, they never have a good game, so their stat line always looks like shit, are actually much more impactful to the success of the team than is represented in the individual outcomes if you're being completely analytical about it. I kind of get the like Moneyball sense from you, where you're so focused on the numbers and analytics that you miss a lot of the like finer points and almost like big picture macro stuff that happens in Dota.
I actually don't look at numbers that much. I think I used to do that more, and I mean I do here and there. Obviously, like if you have a player that's just putting up the highest KDA every single season, obviously, right, they're gonna be looked at as a good player. But I do agree that like a lot of it is like you obviously you miss the finer details and the finer like in-game comms and decisions that go into why some players succeeded and another one didn't. For us, like Thug Potato, he always gets prioritized. The opposite of your offlaner, right? So I think there's things that you're going to miss, but the thing I look at for this is I try to eliminate all of those variables as much as I can to look at purely what that player did. So the one time that I did this like super in depth, where it took a long time watching all of the player perspectives, I tried to look at the decisions that they made purely based on their gameplay. So like if they decide like how their last hitting creeps, the like decisions to pull the wave or not, and then outside of laning, like the way that they look at a team fight, the way that they approach team fights, et cetera, to just try to get the decision making there, because I think that's what really sets people apart. Is like obviously there's mechanical skill, laning skill, CSing, and then for supports like trading decisions and things like that, but also the way you approach team fights, the way that you take in information from the game. If there's people that are like clicking opponents' items a lot, getting that information, I think that makes them a stronger player, because Dota is a game of part of it is information gathering. And I did that for a little while too, just like looked at the way people move on the map. Like that depends, that decides whether or not you're like good or not. It's really easy actually if you do it repetitively, to see like movements and how skillful people are. Carry players backpacking their items or not when they try to like get regen and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it, obviously, and it takes way too much time to try to do this for every single person all the time, season after season. So yes, you're gonna miss things, but at the same time, I think there are ways that you can like identify it without just looking at stats.
All right, well, if I wasn't clear what I was saying, you always put me in a shit tier, and I'm always sacrificing myself in my drafts, and I hate you.
I see. I'll take that
That's
into account
harsh.
next time, IPA.
I have a lot of respect for the amount of time that each of you guys have put into your content producing in AD2L. And I want to keep us on time as much as we can. Make sure Rusty has time to vibe with his excellent teammates before his scrim. Anyone have any final words before we put a cap on episode 2 of Mind for a Game podcast?
Real quick, I just want to say, mostly for me, if I'm talking on content and saying, oh, this player's really good, or this guy like seems like they're underperforming or whatever, normally it's just like the feeling I get from playing against them or watching them. Because, you know, if our AD2L matches end or rescheduled or someone else rescheduled, I try to watch as many games as I can. And so most of them, I would say, you know, when we're looking at a Dota buff page on content, maybe it's like, oh, this guy popped off, they went 20-0 and did really well.
Yeah, that doesn't mean shit.
That's more stat based. But if I'm like really trying to say like, oh, this player I feel is good or not, it's more just the feeling I get from observing their gameplay, I would say, more than their stats.
Playing
That's
against
just
people, for sure. Playing against people gives you a really good read on if they're good or not. I agree with you.
But some people are like not good at that either. Like I'm like, I don't know. Non-ball knowers. I'll say everyone on this pod is a ball knower. But quite a few people out there gabbing are not ball knowers, in my opinion.
I'm going to assume that's a wrap, Chev.
Yeah. We're good.
Rhino, don't be shading my teammates, man. No hate, man. It's all love only.
It was all love. I said, let's move on.
Listen,
I didn't say words.
Dude, I thought that you delivered that perfectly, Rhino.
no, it's very funny.
Voodoo Ranger Tropical Force. It's got Pineapple IPA. It's another 9.5%er. You know, gets me nice and looped up for these pods.